Welcome back to The Social. So we are now turning our attention to a situation at the top of a lot of people's minds right now, the catastrophic earthquakes in Turkey and in Syria. The death toll, it just keeps climbing, sadly, now nearing 20,000 people. So many of us are grappling with feelings of heartache, of course, but also a lot of helplessness as a lot of us are looking at these horrific images from the devastated regions. So we are watching this disaster play out in detail also online, all over our news feeds, on television as well. Riley, what do you think our responsibility is when it comes to consuming these images and balancing probably the real human desire to help, but also to protect our own mental health and helplessness? How are you managing this?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I think I'm thinking about a lot is, first of all, the power of witnessing. So yes, if you can and you have the capacity to bear witness to other people's injustices, to tragedy, is an important part of cementing something in a public consciousness, to make sure that things aren't forgotten, that voices are being heard. Yes, all of that. But also, I think a lot of people feel like, you know, we hear maybe compassion fatigue thrown around as like the term about like, there's so many horrible things happening, I don't possibly know what to do, and I'm just kind of exhausted by it. But I think what people forget is that the point of viewing is so that you can do something about it, and that's an active practice, like staying compassionate, staying shocked, staying outraged so that you hold governments accountable, that you demand money and you do all those types of things. Like, that's something that you actively have to practice. And so it doesn't mean putting yourself in harm's way, but deliberately taking time out of your schedule to think about how can you help, to say, do I have colleagues who are maybe affected by this, and can I be reaching out to them? Those are the types of things that I think is the most important thing, as opposed to just being informed by watching every terrible video that might come on your feed.
Yeah, yeah. I really appreciate you saying that, like, because I definitely haven't been. I've been trying not to look, just because there's been so much children. And I mean, one story that was being passed around recently was a baby who was born with the umbilical cord still attached, and the parents have died. And I think that's not an isolated story. I think there's a lot of stories of children, and it's been heart-wrenching. And it has made me feel helpless. And I know that there are places to donate, but I know also that's very complicated. Right now, we know that there's, and I feel like we're gonna get into this, but just like, this is an area of the world that has suffered so much in the last, decades. And it's a complicated political landscape. And so I do feel a bit confused. I feel a bit overwhelmed. And I want information. Like, I feel like you're more on top of this right now.
I mean, politically, you're right. I mean, we've talked about it on the show that the areas that were hit with this earthquake, one of the areas in northern Syria is an area that has been at war with Bashar Assad, who is the president of Syria. And it's held currently by, I'll use rebels. And so this area has been at war and been bombed, and there is starvation there. There is no access to water. Electricity is an issue. So that has been their situation for 12 years. So now on top of that, this earthquake comes and literally flattens thousands of the buildings there. But because of what is happening, the Syrian government is not coming in and providing aid that they're providing to the other areas that have been hit. That's an area that they've been bombing. They're good to let those people die. They really are. And that is how cold Bashar Assad's regime is. And so the question is, how do you get an aid company, an NGO money, and how do they access that area when it is the worst of the worst places on earth? And so that, for me, has been also a real challenge, is who's able to actually infiltrate these areas that are extremely dangerous and now have no access. They never had a lot to begin with, and now they have nothing. So who's there to save them? And that that's too big for little old me and individuals. But that is part of, I think, what you're saying is, where does my money go and how do I help?
Maybe it's about, you just said that's too big, and maybe it's about making it smaller. I have to say that I have been watching the footage, and I have been watching it on social media. And for some reason, my algorithm is serving me a lot of rescue videos. And it's very difficult. Of course, I understand that it's too difficult for some people. For me, though, in watching these videos, my big takeaway has been, this is the best of the human condition. These rescuers who are going in, doing the bravest work, helping the people who need it the most, that for me is a motivation to, I need to help, I will make the donations, I will help where I can, because this is the best of humanity, what these people are doing. It is, in some ways, these videos are quite beautiful in what they can reflect back to us, because we get a lot of bad news, and we get a lot of bad news about bad people. And then here are these people literally risking their lives, saving babies, saving elderly people, and there's something just so powerful to me about that. And so that's what I've been, it's a happy accident, I don't know, in terms of being served this on the algorithm. And then, but I'm curious to hear what you think about this, Riley, because then on the other side of it, I say to myself, visuals are so powerful, and they can ingrain an image in our minds that is almost stereotypical. I don't want to watch so much of this that the only thing I think of when I see people from this part of the world is devastation and suffering. Because people contain multitudes. Culture is in multitudes. It's not just suffering in these places. But I don't want to associate this only with that.
Right. I mean, I feel like you're right that seeing somebody, just as much as seeing somebody a victim, is to deny them their humanity, their full humanity, if you're seeing them only this way. And I think part of that is like, instead of maybe then thinking of the word allyship, like I just support hoping you get out of this victimhood, it's to say, I'll stand with you as a co-resistor. You stand with them in their strength, and then you find ways to amp that up. And so I don't know what that says about maybe the power of an image, but I think it says something about maybe back to that point of practice, of like deliberately making sure you are working to see people in their fullness is a deliberate choice you get to make. And it's something that you have to refine for yourself. And so I think that, because we won't always get fed it on our algorithms. And so I think that that is something maybe to keep in mind as we go forward and see as more of this.
Hey there, wasn't that great? Do you know where you can find some equally good content? Our YouTube page. It's filled with discussions, debates, and some laughs. Head there now, like and subscribe.